The girl decided to take revenge on the guy for cheating on her and started dating his father. I met Jason in a diner off Route 68, the kind of place that still played Sinatra on the jukebox and served pie with that sad little can of whipped cream. He was all charm and stubble, leaning over the counter like he'd been born on a motorcycle. Said I looked like trouble. I said, good. I've had enough of peace. We dated 6 months before I found out. 6 months of whispered phone calls, smirks when I walked into the room, and perfume that wasn't mine lingering on his collar. The truth came in the ugliest way, a DM from a stranger. Said she'd been seeing him for a year. Sent screenshots. Photos. One of them on his couch, my couch. I stared at that picture for hours. Not because of her. She didn't know. But because he was grinning, barefoot, drinking from my favorite mug. That's the moment something inside me turned. Now, I'm not one to throw a fit. No screaming, no throwing plates. I cleaned the apartment like nothing had happened. Made him dinner. Let him kiss me goodnight. But the next morning, I drove 2 towns over to see someone I hadn't thought about in years. His name was Gerald, Jason's father. And baby, if you think that's where the story ends, buckle up. Because this wasn't about rebound. This was war. Gerald lived in a house with too much stone and not enough love. A place where the mail stacked up on the foyer table and the whiskey never gathered dust. I hadn't seen him since Jason took me to his 50th birthday, back when I still thought Jason was decent. Gerald wore a leather jacket indoors and had the kind of voice that sounded like gravel and regret. He opened the door like he'd been expecting trouble, then smiled when he saw it was me. Well, if it isn't the one that got away, he said, eyes dragging slow over my outfit. I hadn't dressed innocent. I need a drink, I told him. He laughed and let me in. I didn't tell him right away. We sat in his cluttered kitchen, 2 highballs between us. The light overhead flickered like a nervous tick. Gerald leaned back in his chair, watching me like I was a puzzle missing just one piece. I'm guessing Jason messed up, he said. I didn't answer, just took a sip and said, do you ever wonder where your boy got his talent for lying? That made him chuckle. Probably me. His mama always said I was dangerous. Are you? I asked, meeting his eyes. He leaned in, slow. Depends what you want, sweetheart. I want revenge, I thought. Instead, I said, I want to forget what he did to me. Just for a night. And I watched something flicker behind those gray eyes. Guilt maybe. Or something darker. The next morning, I left before sunrise. Gerald didn't ask for my number. He didn't need to. Because that was just the beginning. And the real game hadn't even started yet. Jason didn't notice a thing. That's the worst kind of betrayal, when the guilty one sleeps soundly, like their conscience is on vacation. He came home 2 days later with flowers from a gas station and some excuse about working late. I kissed his cheek, smiled, made pasta. I was done being the girl who cried in silence. Now, I was the girl with a plan. The next time I saw Gerald, it wasn't in secret. I texted him, bold as brass. Jason's out Friday night. Come over. I'll cook. No emoji. No hint of hesitation. He replied with a single word. Done. I cleaned the apartment spotless. Lit a candle in the hallway. Cooked steak the way Gerald liked, rare enough to talk back. Wore a dress Jason hated because he said it made me look like I was trying too hard. Gerald knocked at 8. I let him in without a word. We didn't talk much during dinner. He knew. I knew. The tension was the sauce. After the plates were cleared, he leaned against the sink, arms crossed, watching me wipe the counter. You sure you want this? He asked. I turned, leaned close, and whispered, you don't know the half of it. He didn't kiss me that night. Not yet. But he stayed late. Long enough for my neighbor, Mrs. Dorsey, who Jason loved gossiping with, to see Gerald leave at 11:40 p.m. wearing the same leather jacket. Same crooked smile. By morning, the rumor mill was churning. And Jason? He still hadn't heard a word. But the fuse had been lit. And baby, I was just getting warmed up. 3 days passed. Jason started acting twitchy, asking if I'd seen his razor, snapping at commercials. He didn't know what was wrong, but something in his world had shifted and he could feel it. Funny thing is, I hadn't done anything, not really. Just smiled a little more. Kept my phone close. Wore that same dress again, twice. Men like Jason know when the wind changes. They don't know what's coming, just that it's coming for them. The second time Gerald came over, it was a Sunday afternoon. Jason had gone to the lake with his buddies. Guy's day, he said, kissing my forehead like I was his favorite antique. Gerald showed up with a 6-pack and a grin. This time, he kissed me at the door. There was something wild about it, like he knew he was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Like he liked it. Afterward, we lay tangled on the couch, blinds drawn, the world hushed. "You sure you want him to find out?" he asked. "I don't want him to find out," I said, tracing circles on his chest. "I want him to wonder." Gerald whistled low. "That's colder than I ever taught him." That night, I sent Jason a picture of the dinner I'd made. Just one plate, just one wine glass. I knew he'd be too proud to ask why. The next morning, he brought me coffee in bed, sat beside me longer than usual, studied my face like a man trying to remember how a lock works after someone's changed it. He didn't know yet, but he would. And when he did, it wouldn't be through whispers or messages. It'd be in a room full of people, with no way out. A week later, Jason's mama invited us over for Sunday lunch. One of those awkward affairs where everyone smiles too wide and the potatoes taste like guilt. Gerald was there, of course, sitting at the head of the table, carving roast like a man with secrets stuck in his teeth. Jason didn't suspect a thing. But Gerald? He couldn't stop watching me. And not in some creepy old man way. No, it was hunger mixed with awe, like he knew he was in the middle of a fire and didn't care if he got burned. I leaned into it. I wore that same perfume Jason once said was too much. Wore lipstick that left a little mark on my water glass. Wore heels that clicked when I crossed the room. Jason sat beside me like nothing was wrong, laughing at his brother's jokes. And Gerald, he just smiled. But it was Jason's mother who cracked first. After lunch, she pulled me aside in the kitchen, her voice hushed like a prayer. "You've been acting different," she said. "Different how?" I asked, innocent as spring rain. She hesitated. "You're not unhappy, are you?" I just looked her dead in the eyes and said, "I'm exactly where I want to be." That night, Jason finally snapped. "Why are you so cold lately?" he asked, standing in the hallway like a boy who lost his map. I didn't answer, just walked past him, brushing his shoulder like it meant nothing. Because by then, it didn't. He stood there for a while, staring at the front door, probably wondering when it stopped feeling like home. What he didn't know was that door had already closed on him. And I held the key. It was a Thursday when it finally slipped. Jason came home early, earlier than he ever had. Said his job got rained out. I was still in my robe, hair wet, a single glass of wine on the table, Gerald's cologne still clinging faintly to the air. Jason sniffed the room like a hound. Walked to the window, opened it. Didn't say anything for a long time. Then he asked, "You see my dad lately?" I didn't blink. "Why?" He shrugged. "He's been weird. Distant. Maybe he's got a girl," I said, letting it hang between us like a loaded gun. Jason looked at me. Really looked. And that's when I saw it. The moment the seed took root. Doubt. The thing that gnaws and chews and never quite goes away. His shoulders stiffened. His jaw clenched just enough to twitch. But he didn't ask anything else. Didn't need to. Later that night, while he was in the shower, I texted Gerald. "He's starting to crack." Gerald wrote back, fast. "You want me to back off?" I stared at that message for a long time. Then replied, "No, let him burn." The next day, Jason left work early again. I knew because I tracked his location. He didn't come home. Instead, he went to Gerald's place. Sat in the driveway for almost an hour. Didn't go in. Didn't call. Just stared at the house like it owed him an answer. I watched it all from Gerald's guest room window, hidden behind the curtain. He didn't know I was inside, but I knew he was out there. And just like that, the trap was starting to close. Jason didn't say a word about sitting in Gerald's driveway. But something changed in him after that. His touch got colder. His words got clipped. Like he was choking on questions, but didn't know how to ask. He started watching me, not lovingly. Suspiciously. Like a man trying to catch shadows moving behind his back. He checked my phone once, late at night. Thought I was asleep. I wasn't. Let him see what I wanted him to. Texts to Marcy about yoga and wine nights. A calendar full of appointments that meant nothing. The real stuff? That was buried deep in a photo vault app disguised as a calculator. Screenshots. Videos. One of them. Gerald's hand on my hip in our kitchen, him laughing, calling me trouble. Jason didn't find that one. Not yet. But he felt it. That gnawing, crawling suspicion that eats a man from the inside out. Meanwhile, Gerald was unraveling too. He'd started texting more. Longer messages. "Miss you. Dreamt about you again. When can I see you?" It was sweet. Tragic even. But this wasn't a love story. This was demolition. The moment I knew Jason was near the edge came on a Monday night. He'd had a beer too many, came home angry from nowhere, slammed the door hard enough to shake the coat rack. "You talked to my dad lately?" he asked. I shrugged. "Not since your mom's lunch." He stared at me, then said it. "I think he's screwing someone." I let that sit a second. Let it bite. Then I smiled, slow and steady. "Well," I said, brushing past him to the sink, "he's a grown man. Can't blame him for wanting something new." I didn't see his face after that, but I heard the sound of his bottle hitting the floor. And I knew. He was circling the truth now. It wouldn't be long before he saw it clear. And when he did, he'd beg for the days when all he had was suspicion. Jason started unraveling slow, like an old rope fraying strand by strand. He stopped shaving, slept on the couch 2 nights in a row, said he had work on his mind. But I saw the way he looked at me in the mornings, like I was a puzzle he'd once solved and now couldn't read. Then one night, he didn't come home. I didn't call. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on our porch swing, and waited. Not for him, for the moment the truth would knock, dressed in shame. At 2:17 a.m., headlights cut across the lawn. Jason stumbled out of his truck, stinking of bourbon and dirt. His eyes were bloodshot and wet. "I went to his house," he mumbled. I sipped my wine. "Whose?" "You know damn well who." He dropped a photograph on the porch steps. It was Gerald and me, not touching, but close. From the backyard barbecue 3 weeks back. My head tilted, laughing at something he'd said. Gerald looking at me like I was the sun through storm clouds. Jason's hands shook. "You told me you hadn't seen him." "I said I hadn't talked to him since your mom's lunch," I said, calm. "Words matter." That's when he exploded. He cursed, shouted, paced the yard, kicked over a planter I'd potted just the week before. I didn't flinch, didn't scream, just watched. "Did you sleep with him?" he finally asked, voice cracked and thin. I tilted my head. Let silence fill the space like smoke. "You want the truth?" I said. He nodded, desperate. So I leaned in close and whispered it like a lover's secret. "I didn't just sleep with him, Jason. I chose him." He staggered back like I'd struck him. And maybe I had. Because truth, when it lands, don't need fists. It carves with a whisper. He didn't say another word. Just got in his truck and drove off into the dark. I sat there until dawn. And smiled. Because the bomb had gone off. But the fallout? That was still on its way. 3 days. That's how long Jason disappeared. No calls. No texts. Just silence. The kind that hums in your bones and tastes like metal. Then, right as dusk settled on the 4th day, there was a knock at the door. I opened it slow. Jason stood there. Not angry, not wild, just empty. His hair was a mess, his shirt wrinkled, and there was a tremble in his hands he didn't bother hiding. "I thought about crashing my truck," he said. I stepped aside. Not to let him in, just to keep the light on his face. "You didn't," I said. He nodded. "Didn't feel worth dying over someone who never really loved me." That part almost made me blink. Almost. Instead, I asked, "You come for closure?" He laughed once. Bitter. I came to ask why. I poured him a drink. Handed it to him without sitting down. "You want the real reason?" I asked. Jason looked up at me, eyes wet and bloodshot. "Yeah." So I gave it to him. "Because you made me feel small," I said. "Because you cheated and thought I wouldn't find out. Because you gaslit me so good I started doubting my own damn reflection. And because every time I needed you to show up, emotionally, physically, you were always somewhere else." He blinked. "But Gerald." "Gerald was the nail," I interrupted. "But you built the coffin." We stood in that kitchen like 2 people picking through wreckage. And I swear, for the first time in his life, Jason saw himself clearly. "I didn't know I was that bad," he whispered. "You didn't care enough to look." He set the glass down. Didn't finish it. "I'm selling the house," he said. "Thought you should know." "Good. Guess this is goodbye." "It was goodbye the moment you handed her your key," I said. He nodded. Walked out the door slow. Didn't look back. I closed it behind him, locked it, and breathed deep. The storm had passed. But I wasn't done just yet. Because sometimes, after the storm, you rebuild on your own terms. Jason left town 2 weeks later. Didn't tell anyone but his mother. Packed a U-Haul and vanished like dust in the wind. I heard through the grapevine he took a job down in Corpus, some offshore rig that paid enough to disappear for good. I didn't shed a tear. Instead, I redecorated. Painted the walls. Changed the curtains. Bought a record player and spun vinyl from the 60s like I was living in a different time. A better one. The house felt lighter, like it had exhaled. But Gerald? He kept calling, kept showing up with takeout and compliments, trying to turn this wreckage into something soft. I let him. For a while. He was sweet in the way older men sometimes are, careful, attentive, always fixing things that didn't need fixing. Part of me liked it. The quiet stability. The way he never asked questions about the past. But one night, while we were sitting on the back porch, he said it. I'd give it all up, you know. The house, the truck, my job, just to do right by you. And I froze. Because that wasn't the plan. He wasn't supposed to fall. I didn't want love. I wanted consequence. He looked at me then. Really looked. And I saw it in his eyes, the hope. And I knew I had to end it. I took a breath, looked out at the yard and said, Gerald, I didn't start this to find forever. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, so I was just what? The knife? No, I said softly. You were the mirror. That one cut deep. He left without finishing his drink. Didn't slam the door. Didn't say goodbye. Just walked into the night with the weight of every choice hanging on his shoulders. And me? I stood there in the quiet, wrapped in nothing but moonlight and my own damn peace. Revenge was never about making someone else hurt. It was about remembering what it feels like to matter, even if you have to remind them the hard way. Weeks passed. Summer melted into fall, and the town, like always, moved on. The folks at the diner stopped whispering. Gerald stopped calling. And Jason? Well, he was just a ghost with my last name on some old insurance paperwork. But peace has a way of showing you what the war covered up. One morning, I woke up early. Not to anyone's alarm or someone stomping through the kitchen, just the sound of birds. That quiet, sacred hush that only comes when no one needs you. I made coffee, sat on the porch barefoot, let the breeze wash over my skin and thought, this is mine now. The house, the silence, the damn sunrise. All mine. But closure don't come wrapped in ribbon. Sometimes it shows up wearing guilt, dressed as kindness. That afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name written in a sharp, familiar hand. I opened it slow. Inside was a photo, one of me and Jason, from years ago, back when smiles still felt honest. Tucked behind it was a note. I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted you to know, I finally see it. Everything. I was blind, and you lit the match. Maybe you did it for revenge. Maybe not. Either way, thank you for the fire. No signature. Didn't need one. I sat with that letter a long time. Held it like it might bite. And maybe it did. Because part of me, a small, foolish part, felt something break loose. Not pain. Not regret. Just the final thread of something I'd been dragging too long. I burned the photo. Kept the letter. Not as a trophy, but as proof I wasn't crazy. He saw it. He finally saw it. It's been 7 months. I don't flinch when I hear footsteps on the porch anymore. Don't check the driveway for trucks I hope won't be there. And the silence? It doesn't ache like it used to. It hums. Gerald never came back. Not really. I heard he started dating a woman from his church. One of those soft-spoken types who wears pastel sweaters and bakes for the neighbors. Good for him. Everyone deserves a gentle ending. Jason stayed gone. Last I heard, he'd shaved his head and started writing poetry on some oil rig forum. The kind of man who only finds his soul after losing everything else. But me? I didn't move on. I moved in. Into myself. Into my space. Into this life I built with grit and spite and a little too much red wine. I kept the house. Changed the locks. Planted lavender where Jason's favorite lawn chairs used to sit. Adopted a dog. Named him Smoke. Because that's what's left after fire. Sometimes, people ask if I regret it. If I wish I'd just left quietly. Found someone new. Turned the page. And I tell them the truth. I don't regret the flame. Because it lit the path out of that shadow. Because revenge didn't make me whole. But it cleared the room so I could finally build wholeness on my own damn terms. So no, I didn't end up with the guy. Didn't ride off into the sunset. Didn't get a ring or a picket fence. But I got something better. I got the last word. And baby, it was mine.